So you guys have seen my face before. I'm Megan Tang. I'm the Associate Director of the High School Programs at Crosby Scholars, and really have the privilege of designing and coming up with the topics that we're going to be sharing and presenting with you all. And this is one where we have consistently gotten questions about and concerns, and it's a big hot topic for you all as students. There's a test optional policy for many schools, and including all the UNC system schools, which is a big change. There have been issues and limitations to being able to take tests. What does all of that mean? What does test optional mean? Should you do it? Should you not do it? I'm concerned. I'm worried. All sorts of things. So we put together this panel, and we grabbed two wonderful representatives from kind of two different backgrounds, but both schools that began this process this year in light of all that's going on. And they can explain a little bit more about how the school made the decision, although with UNC Charlotte, that certainly was a system-wide decision that kind of came out. So I don't know if they'll say, we did it all on our own, but there may be some pros and cons. My background is I worked in Wake Forest University admissions, and they have been test optional since I've been out of school or after. So it's been many years now. And so I was fortunate enough to work in the admissions office when they had just kind of begun that process of being test optional and what it looks like. So you'll know that there are tons of schools out there that have made that policy that's just a part of their admissions, regardless of the COVID-19. And we may see changes in the future of what that'll look like. So we want to have this as an opportunity to hear from two representatives from two colleges that are making these decisions right now. But again, remember, they're making these decisions as it's happening. So lots of grace to both of them. So I'd love to just kind of start off the panel and the question with just a general, what in the world is a test optional policy? What does that actually mean? And how are you all defining that when talking to prospective students who are applying? And you guys can decide. I can call on you, or if whoever just wants to unmute first. Oh, and I need to introduce you all first. I'm sorry. We have Megan Olson Malone, who is coming from Davidson College, and we have Jen Nowitzki, who's coming from UNC Charlotte. So those are the two schools that we are representing today. So again, the question is, how and really what is this test optional policy?
Yeah, so Davidson decided we're doing a test optional pilot for 3 years. So we're now test optional for 3 years. And test optional means, I think that option to submit. No, I can't hear you now. Let's see, can you hear me now? Okay, sorry, should I start all over? Did you not hear anything I said? I can't hear you, or you're on mute.
The last thing we heard was making the decision for the next 3 years.
Okay, yeah, so Davidson's test optional for the next 3 years. And I think a lot of the anxiety I've been hearing from students is colleges are saying that they're test optional. Does that really mean that they're test optional? And so it really does. We're saying test optional because you have the option of submitting test scores or not. I'm talking to you from my house. It looks like Jen is working remotely as well. And so please know that we're reading your applications with the lens that our lives look very different. And we know that your lives look very different. And we know that testing is limited and that students don't have the same access to testing. And so you really do have the option. We mean it when we say that we're test optional. And honestly, it's not going to change our process at Davidson a whole lot because testing has always been the least important part of our application process. And so your whole application is kind of a puzzle, putting all the puzzle pieces together, and testing is just one element. And so we are not nervous to not see test scores. And so we don't want you to be nervous if you're not submitting test scores as well.
So for UNC Charlotte, this is a little bit different for us this year, as it is for you. So we are test optional for the fall 2021 semester and the spring 2022. I can't believe that's already kind of in our headlights there. So for seniors, I completely understand that just the college process in general is overwhelming, and then you add a global pandemic, and that makes it 10 times more overwhelming. When we say test optional, we completely mean that sending test scores, not sending them, it's okay. You don't have to send them. We, again, like Davidson, completely understand that you probably might not have had the opportunity to take the SAT or ACT, and we don't want to penalize you for that. So if you do have test scores, you can send them. It's completely your choice. At the end of the day, we're doing a holistic review where now we do require an essay, and we're really wanting to get to know our students better. We're wanting to understand what type of student you are academically. Personally, we're looking at that GPA, the type of courses that you have been able to take. So really, just like I said, a holistic review of being able to understand who you are as a student and a person. So if you don't send test scores, that's fine. It's not required to complete your essay. Similar to how it's been in the past, we have never required letters of recommendation, but if you've sent them, then they haven't penalized you. So that's how you could kind of look at test scores for UNC Charlotte. If you send them, you're not going to be penalized. If you don't, you're not going to be penalized. So that's just something to keep in mind, and it's also great to remember that each school is going to be different. So the ones that you are interested in, you're going to want to ask those questions. And how long are they going to be test optional, and what are they really focusing on? But here at UNC Charlotte, we are test optional for this year, and definitely want to keep an eye on our website for anything else that changes. But again, we're also changing with what COVID has thrown at us, so this will also be our first time really focusing on the essay, so we've kind of had to change our application process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I typically tell students that, or I was telling them before a lot of applications came out, that you may start to see more essays pop up because it's an opportunity to share your voice. A little bit about those essays, because I know if I ask the question, well, now what is the most important part of the application? You guys just both explained it's a holistic review. It's all of one big picture. But speaking specifically to the essays, what are some things that students could do to enhance their essay and to really share their voice that you've seen as a strong essay or a strong report that came through in the application?
Yeah, I think as well, because all of a sudden, the 5-paragraph essay has been drilled into you all since day one of high school. And so now for your college application, we're asking you to do something different. We're asking you to write about yourself, and that can feel a little uncomfortable. But I want to encourage students that we're expecting these essays to come from high school students. So there's no pressure to bust out the thesaurus and use words you wouldn't usually use as you're talking. We really want to hear your voice. Your essay is the only part of the application where we get to hear your voice. And so if you think about what's already represented in your application and what else do you want to tell the admission office, there's something else that's not already represented that you want the admission office to know. We know that we can't learn everything about you in your essay. So there's not pressure to do that. So just adding another small snippet of who you are and allowing that to come through in your writing, and allowing your personality to shine through in your writing. If you're really funny, you can be funny in your essay. If you're not very funny, don't feel like you have to try to be funny in your essay. So just allowing your personality to shine through, that's really the greatest gift you can give an admission counselor, is allowing us to get to know you as best we can.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that essay is just a great time to show who you are as a person, as a student, whether it's you are involved in something that has changed your life, or you witnessed something, or even how COVID impacted you. It doesn't have to be about that. It doesn't have to be the funniest story, the saddest story. I like to give students the scale, in my opinion, of we don't necessarily want a 10-page fairy tale, but we also don't want to know why your favorite color is green. We really want to see that some effort was put towards this essay, that some thought went into it, that you You had somebody check the grammar, the sentence structure, small details like that, but also, if it doesn't make complete sense, but this is an essay that you completely understand and can basically describe who you are as a person, as a student, and that's what we're wanting to see. Again, we're excited about these essays because we're going to get to know our applicants so much better than we have in the past. And it's not just going to be a GPA or test scores. It's going to be who you are as a student, who you are as a person. And now we can understand that. And they're all different prompts, especially for UNC Charlotte. There's 7 different ones on the Common App website. And they range from all different things to something that like an obstacle that you've encountered, to something that you have accomplished, to even just kind of writing your own essay. So again, we're wanting to see that effort and who you are as a person and a student.
Absolutely. And for all of our students, we have recorded several different essay writing workshops where we talk about how can you tell your story, what are ways to continue to ask that question, why? Why does the sentence that I'm adding here matter, and how does it add value to what my story is? I would echo everything they said. The more you can tell a story about yourself, and it's not regurgitating anything else on the applications. You don't need to redo your resume. You don't need to redo your transcript. Make it specific to you. This is extra part to the application to add more, and it's really going to highlight more about you when you're not submitting that test score. And even if you are submitting a test score, it's still an opportunity to highlight yourself. So that's fantastic. One of the questions that I have that we hear a lot, and I know that this is tough because I remember getting this question and I never had a concrete answer, so I'll probably say you won't either. But the question is, how do I know to submit my score or not? How do I decide what is a good score, what is not a good score? So I'm just curious if you all have recommendations that you've been sharing with students on how to make that decision. I know it's different now because it's not just I was able to take a test a bunch of times and then can decide. It's limited opportunities as well. So what might you say to how to decide to submit or not?
Yeah, I think for multiple times that all admission officers are kind of viewing that with, we're viewing your applications with that lens. And it's going to be different for every school. So like Jen mentioned earlier, I would encourage you to reach out and ask the schools that you're really interested in attending. For Davidson, I think, I've been telling students, if you're really proud of your scores, go ahead and submit them. I think another really good tool is a lot of institutions will post either their average scores or their middle 50% scores. And so you can kind of see where your test scores fall in line at that point. And if you feel proud of your scores, absolutely submit them, and we'll review them as part of the process. And if it's something that you aren't sure about and you want to hold back on them, that's an option too. I think, for academics, if you're not submitting your test scores, at Davidson, we're going to focus a lot more heavily on the courses that you're taking within the context of your high school and the grades, the trend in your grades that you're receiving in those courses. And so that's, if test scores aren't there for us to see, that's what we're going to really focus on as we're reviewing your academics.
At UNC Charlotte, it's pretty much the same. I would give the example again of a letter of recommendation. So in our application process, we don't require letters of recommendation. But if you get a great recommendation from a coach or a teacher, you're going to want to send that because you want us to know this about you. So again, if you have test scores that you are really proud of or that you think you did excellent on, or if you have multiple test scores, we do super score them. So you can send those to us. Our middle 50% ranges for an SAT are an 1110 to a 1290, and ACTs are a 22 to a 28. Now, you want to remember that that's our middle 50% range. So we have accepted 25 students that have fell below those scores, and 25%, not just 25 of students that have been above those scores too. So that's kind of our admitted freshman profile for our test scores. But again, you just really want to remember that it's not going to penalize you. So if you were to send us 17, 19, we will just see that those are test scores, that those have been added. If you are still unsure and maybe you're thinking, you know, my GPA is not where I would like it to be, but I'm a better test taker and I have had the ability to score a 30 or a 1300, then maybe that's when you can say, okay, GPA is kind of there, but look at my test scores. That would be where you could go ahead and send the scores as well. But just kind of what you feel comfortable with. And I know that this is a very open-ended question, but you guys also want to remember that as admissions counselors, some of us are also going through this for the first time. So being able to take part of these discussions or reaching out to us and asking these types of questions are what we're here for, so that we can, you know, reassure you that we're in the same boat and we're going to do everything we can to make you feel confident when you're applying for admission.
And that's really great to hear, the openness. I hope all of you students heard that. The openness of these admissions offices have to have that, you know, to talk to you and walk you through that. I don't think they will say, yes, submit, no, do not submit, but they will give you enough confidence in your decision. And I used to always tell students, and still tell students today, how does it match your academic profile and what you've done in school? Does it mirror what you've done in school? Or are you looking at your grades and then looking at your test score going, my test score isn't as great as my academics? And then really looking at that middle 50% and looking at the data of who the school has admitted. Those are no for sure you're going to get in because you're in that range, but it's just to know this is information that can help you make a decision in the process. One thing that, and this is kind of, a lot of these questions are so very similar, so I know we feel like we're repeating ourselves, but oftentimes we've heard from students now, well, if I don't submit, are you going to look at it as I had a bad test score? And we've given them long answers here, but we want to hear it from you all who are working in the office right now. If I don't submit, are you thinking that I had a bad test score when I took the test? I'll let you answer, guys.
No, I think not at all. We wouldn't make that assumption as we're reading. We really don't make any assumptions as we're reading applications across the board. We know that there's a host of reasons why a student may not have been able to take a test. For one of them is access to testing, and overwhelmingly, we really want you all to prioritize your health and safety and the health and safety of your family. And so there will be no negative assumptions made in any way if you don't submit a test score at all. And in general, I just want to say, I think, at least from Davidson's perspective, it seems that parents, mentors, and students have always overemphasized standardized testing more than colleges have. Students have always found it a more important part of the process, and we never, yes, your test scores, when we were test required, your test scores were on the screen, and it was something that we saw, but I've never heard an admission counselor around the committee table at Davidson say, oh, wow, look at the student, they're amazing because of their test scores. We never talk about that. We really get excited about you all as students, and test scores have always been the least important part of the process, and never a driver for a decision in an admission committee at Davidson. So please know that it's never really been emphasized as much as students have put emphasis in it in our process.
UNC Charlotte is the same way. We're not going to assume anything about you. Think of it as we only know what you tell us. We only know what you share with us. And I would say that your biggest worry should be making sure that you complete your application and making sure that we do have all of the pieces so that we can review your application and provide you with a decision. Since test scores are optional, we don't need them to make a decision on your application. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. Just because we're saying optional does not mean, well, we're saying that, but we want to see them. If that was the case, then we would add them as a requirement to complete your application. So what is important is going to be what's going to make sure that your application is complete and you can meet our deadlines and that we can provide you with a decision.
Absolutely. Thank you. So this is a little bit of a logistical question, especially in regards to Common App. So if a student took a test early in the fall or the spring of their junior year and they took advantage of the 4 free score reports and they sent the scores to schools that at that time required scores, or any school for that matter, and now are wanting to be test optional, technically that information was just sent to the schools. What is happening if they choose to be test optional on the Common App, because they can click per school and by school on the Common App to say, yes, I'm test optional here, or no, I want to send it to this school, or have them be reviewed. Are they basically just not showing up on the application if they say they are test optional? Okay. So I don't need more explanation unless you want to share it. But did you all catch that as students? That's something you guys have had of, I already sent my scores, but I want to be test optional. What's going to happen? They are saying it doesn't show up on your application because you clicked do not review my scores. I'm test optional. So good. Thank you. This question may just be for Jen at UNC Charlotte, because you all have specific colleges as a part of UNC Charlotte. We've heard from schools, the larger institutions, that there are still some colleges within the university that are requiring test scores. So, for example, we've heard some engineering schools are still requiring test scores. Is that the case at UNC Charlotte? What does that look like? Do you know the specifics of which schools still require those test scores?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it used to be in the past that computer science and engineering did have a specific threshold or range for SAT or ACT test scores. That's not the case. For engineering specifically, I know they are going to look heavily at the math courses that you've taken and how well you did in those. If you've taken at least pre-cal, what kind of math class you're taking your senior year. For computer science, as far as I know, I'm not sure what specifics they're changing to, but I know that they're not going to require test scores. And then it used to be that for scholarships and our honors program that they would look at test scores as well. So pretty much the test portion of any piece in any academic college or scholarships has really just been removed completely. So for specific majors, again, we have some competitive majors like engineering, business, computer science, and nursing. Really, we're just looking for students to be towards the middle to upper ends of our GPA ranges, so a 3.7 to a 4.3. And then for scholarships, honors programs, anything like that, that's again going to be a holistic review where they're taking that test portion out of the review process.
Yeah, and I don't know, Megan, if you wanted to say anything about, I know you guys don't have the specific programs, well, you have programs, but not quite like UNC Charlotte, but maybe the scholarships and making decisions, in the test optional world.
Yeah, we're not applying into a specific major at Davidson, so I'm just applying into school. So that's kind of the difference in admission there. But for merit scholarships at Davidson, testing has actually never been a part of the conversation for merit scholarships at Davidson. For our merit scholarships, we're really looking for things like leadership, service, bridge building in your community. So those are the things that we're mainly looking for. Of course, you have to be competitive for admission to receive a merit scholarship, but testing isn't a part of the conversation in any way, and they never have been for merit scholarships. So that process isn't changing for us.
Good. Thank you. Thank you both. The other thing that this is kind of, students have heard this, and sometimes it's just the rumor mill, but we'll ask it here anyways, that they've heard somewhere that the colleges have told them, if you do end up taking a test later and you've already submitted your application, you can submit these scores again to add an extra bonus piece. Is that something that's being recommended? And from what I've heard from students, they're kind of saying it as, I took the test in December, and so then I send my test scores, but I applied in October, November. So it's significantly later in the process. Any recommendations there, or again, just kind of the thing of you don't need to submit them because it's just optional? Oh, okay.
I missed the first time. Hear the question again.
I can repeat it.
I'll say for UNC Charlotte, I personally have told students that they can send test scores after if they are able to take them at a later date past the deadline. And just to remember, it's kind of like letters of recommendation for us. I'll continue to use that example where if you are to receive them at a later date, it's just another piece that will get added to your application. Something to keep in mind that if you meet our early action deadline, which is a non-binding decision of November 1st, you're guaranteed a decision by January 30th. So adding something more to your application after it's already been completed could just make it where you delay the decision for a little bit. I'm not saying that you wouldn't receive it January 30th, but it might have already been ready, and then we get these test scores and you say, I want you to look at them, and it's a whole nother process that we have to do. So that's just something to keep in mind, but students can really send them at any point in time. Since they're not required to complete your application, then, you could be applying and meet that November 1st deadline, already know that you have been admitted to UNC Charlotte by January, take the test in February, send it to us in March, and we could add those test scores to your application still. So since it's not a required piece, we can really accept that whenever.
Yeah, and I think I understand the question now that I heard Jen's response. And it's similar for Davidson. You're welcome to send test scores or whatever letters of recommendation, additional things before decisions come out. But we're not looking at them. Megan had used the word bonus. We're not looking at them as a bonus to your application. Test scores have always been used to just as an added layer of context. And so don't think of it, if you send your test scores later to us, it's not bonus points for your application. It's just another layer of context. And for most students, their grades are in line with their test scores. And so it really doesn't make that much of a difference. So it's completely up to you. But we definitely don't look at them as bonus points in any way to your application if you submit them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's another statistic that you all are providing for the students. I have a couple questions that I'll just quickly kind of respond to the students. We've definitely explained this to them many times. But someone is asking, how far back do you look at my grades from freshman year? You're not going to have a middle school transcript in front of them. But we've always said, since you've been in the program, to our students that ninth grade really is what kicks it off. And you guys can share anything you want to talk about with grades of what's most important. I will actually ask a question about grades because I'm sure you're seeing such unique compilations of transcripts right now with pass-fail and grades. And how has your review of a transcript changed? Or maybe it hasn't, but what are you doing to kind of look at these differences that our current senior class has because of their junior spring for most of the students, I know in the country, but certainly in our county and in the state?
Yeah, I think at Davidson, reading, that's part of the reason why we read regionally, right? We know your high schools really well. I oversee the Triad area, and I'm used to reading for the Triad. I've been reading for the Triad for 4 years now, and so we know your high schools really well. We have relationships with your counselors, and so if we have questions about your grades, we reach out to your counselors or we reach out to you and ask those questions. And so there's a lot of care going into the process as we read your applications. You guys have put forth a lot of effort crafting these applications. And so I want you to know there's a lot of care going into it as we read them. And then I know that, academic recommendations aren't required for UNC Charlotte, and I think that's the point of differentiation at Davidson. I think being really thoughtful about your academic recommendations, and it may not be the class that you got straight A's in and aced the course and you never had to speak up in that class because it was really easy for you. It might be the class where you struggled a little bit, or you had a teacher that watched you learn to think in a new way. And so really being thoughtful about who you ask to write those letters of recommendation is also going to give us important context as we read your application to Davidson.
I'll say at UNC Charlotte, we are definitely prepared to see that transcripts are going to look different, especially that last semester, junior year. Something that you want to keep in mind is those minimum course requirements. So those 4 units of English, 4 units of math and advanced math included in that 4, 2 units or 3 units of a social science, or 3 units of a science, 2 units of a social science, 1 being U.S. history, 2 units of the same foreign language. So that's really what we're looking for. We're looking at, also what type of courses did you take? How well did you do in them? We completely understand that last semester, junior year, might be pass or fail grades. They might be the PC-19. You might not have any grades at all. So we are expecting that every transcript that we could already know what it looks like to be completely different for every student, for every North Carolina public school. So that's just something to keep in mind too, is, again, I know I mentioned this a couple times, but as an admissions office, we're going through these changes as well. But that's why we do have that essay. That's why we have these GPA ranges. We're hoping that if you chose that pass-fail grade, you realize that that was going to help your GPA more than taking that B, C, or A grade as well. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind, that it's really a holistic review. So if you get 1 C or 1 D, that's not going to ruin your chances. We are looking for those upwards trends. We're seeing, how did you do your senior year? What kind of classes? Were you able to take dual enrollment, AP courses, different things like that? So that's just something to keep in mind, and that we are prepared for each transcript to look very different.
Yeah, I don't envy you all in the seats you're in this year, because it's a lot of changes all at one time. And I can imagine the adjustment for UNC Charlotte as well. So I think right now we've kind of covered all the questions that our students submitted and have asked in this session today. And I think we have definitely covered the fact that this test optional policy means it is test optional. You all have heard it from UNC Charlotte. It's like adding the recommendations, letters of recommendations it's an extra piece that you're adding. It doesn't have to be submitted. And with Davidson, it's another statistic. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're making your decisions. But I hope that you all are leaving this session going, I should not be afraid of the test optional policy, and they're not trying to trick me. This is not a trick. We've been saying this all along. This is a fantastic thing that schools have decided to do because of the impacts and hurdles you all have had to face with trying to even take the test to begin with. So that's just some commentary from Crosby Scholars. What I'd love to do with our remaining time, because you all are representing 2 wonderful schools, is to just, if you want to kind of share anything, it could either be updates and brief information about your school. Just, you can kind of take the floor and give, it doesn't have to be an information session, but just anything you'd love to share with the students who are on the call today. So I think Megan snuck out. So Jen, I'll have you go first for UNC Charlotte.
Yeah, absolutely. So my usually biggest piece of advice to all students is to always apply early. As I mentioned, we have that early action deadline of November 1st. So students that meet that November 1st deadline are guaranteed a decision by January 30th. It is early action and not early decision. So that means it's non-binding, meaning that you do not have to commit to UNC Charlotte if you've been admitted. We certainly hope that you will, but you have essentially the time frame from end of January to May 1st to decide if you're going to enroll. So not only does receiving your decision earlier mean that you don't have to worry about that application process anymore, you can enjoy what's left of your senior year. It has time for you to focus on really what you want to do with your future, and then you can also look into our scholarship process too. And at UNC Charlotte, the scholarship process is separately. So we are having students apply for admission. You don't have to wait for an admission letter. As soon as you submit that, and once our scholarship portal opens up, which will be in the first week of October, then you'll be able to apply for scholarships. And that's going to house all the different ones, and they range from all different things and all different prices to help students. But the number one way that you can stay in contact with us is by creating a Future 49er portal. If you haven't already done so, but you plan to apply via CFNC or Common App, that is going to prompt you to create a Future 49er portal. So even if you have multiple or you haven't created one yet, we can merge all of them, so don't worry about that. We don't have a preference on how you submit your application either, but it's all going to come down eventually to one Future 49er portal where you can go ahead and stay in contact with us, and then also receive updates about events, different things that we're doing. Currently, we still are completely virtual. We are hoping to start some in-person tours in the middle of October, but our website, and we'll be sending emails and texts to students to let them know when our doors will be open and when we can host guests back. But we do have a virtual open house that will be opening or will be on October 24th. Students can register for it now. You will have the ability to meet with current academic advisors, students, professors, and really get a feel for what campus is like, even though you won't physically be there. So we're going to bring that to you. And then the last piece of advice I have is to just kind of stay in contact with myself or the office. Like I mentioned earlier, this is my job. This is what I'm here for. I don't care what type of question it is, whether you want to go over any more test optional questions or you are admitted and you want to know what type of bed sheets to bring. That's what I'm here for, and I just hope that you guys kind of stay in contact with me or in contact with our office too.
Great. Jen, just a couple questions that came in as you were speaking. One student wanted some clarity on the scholarships. For scholarships, is there a separate portal they need to go into to apply for the UNC Charlotte scholarships?
Yeah, so it is called the Niner Scholars Portal. So once we have some type of information, whether it's a portal or an application that you have built through undergraduate admissions, then you can go ahead and create this Niner Scholars Portal. Now, it won't be open until around the first to second week of October, but we are going to send out emails to remind students of that. You are going to be matched for scholarships that you're eligible for based off of your GPA, the information you provided. So this houses all of our university merit-based scholarships. And this will essentially be a bank for all of the scholarships that you're eligible for, even our honors programs, and you can apply through that scholars portal. Any external or outside scholarships that you receive, all you have to do is let the scholarship office know. So whether it's something through your high school, your community, a job, or anything like that, we will accept that as well.
Great. And you mentioned that you would love to connect with students. So could we share your email address with students?
Yes.
Wonderful. And I think I'll add it in the chat box because I have it handy in my inbox for all of the students. I won't make you read it aloud, all the letters. We'll just put it in the chat box, and we can follow up with any of the students who are on the panel discussion today to email you all with the contact. I've heard a couple of people request that, so that's great. And I don't see any others coming right this second. One question was about regular admission, early action, and can you apply again to regular admissions if you've been rejected? So we've explained that in some of our questionnaires, but if you want to tackle that question real quick, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So if a student is denied in early action, then you are not able to apply for regular decision. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. If a student is denied, we do in their decision letter share our contact information and tell them that there are different options, different pathways to UNC Charlotte. And kind of going off of this, I see that I actually have a question that's been sent to me asking about associate's degree or college courses. So for those students, so to kind of go off of that, so if you've been denied for early action, you can apply you can apply for the next fall semester as a transfer student. So that means that you have taken college credit, maybe at a community college after you've graduated high school, and then that's a separate pathway to UNC Charlotte. Typically, if you are local in the area too, we have a 49er Next program where it's essentially like a bridge program where you could earn your associate's degree at specific schools and then be guaranteed to have a pathway to UNC Charlotte. Or we have also our passport program for students that attend Central Piedmont Community College for a year, get to take a course at UNC Charlotte. And then that is a guaranteed pathway to UNC Charlotte as well. And I see that some students have some questions about like college courses or if you earn your associate's degree. So right now, if you are currently earning your associate's degree while you are earning your high school diploma, you want to still apply right now as a first-year student. You do not want to wait. As admissions team, we completely understand that students are going to have courses in progress. So think of, you're still going to graduate in June, but you don't want to wait till after you've graduated to apply to college, because then it's kind of too little too late. The classes could be full or, whatever it may be. So if you're earning your associate's degree, you can actually indicate that on your application. We do have a specific counselor that helps our early college high school students, but that's awesome that if you're earning an associate's degree or if you are taking college classes. Regardless, you can send us that unofficial transcript, but once you're admitted, we will need that official transcript so that we can go ahead and award you that credit. And then I do see what the minimum GPA requirement is real quickly. So we don't have a specific requirement. Again, we have a middle 50% range. So weighted GPA is a 3.7 to a 4.3. Unweighted is a 3.3 to a 3.8. Now, if you are below or above those ranges, that is okay. That is, again, what we're looking for the essay, the type of classes you are able to take. But if you fall within those ranges, you can feel confident that you're competitive for admission to UNC Charlotte. So I know that was kind of a lot of last pieces of information, but again, if you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to email me.
Absolutely, thank you. And I've just posted that in the chat box for everybody, so you can grab that, and again, we'll email you with the email address. Megan, I think you had cut out when I was just explaining what now we'd love for you to do is just, if there's anything you'd love to share with the students who are on the call today about Davidson College, whether it be updates or just a overall admissions spiel, with the remaining time we have, you can take the floor as our Davidson College's representative.
Awesome. Well, thanks sorry I cut out for a little bit. We're having rainy weather next to us, so I think my internet connection is not as strong as it usually is. But as you're getting to know colleges and just in general in your college search, I think it's a little bit overwhelming with the amount of offerings that colleges are putting out there. But know that I think students are actually getting to know colleges better than they ever have before, even when you visit. So I think be encouraged about that. I don't think students are at a disadvantage right now because they're not able to visit campuses in person. I think that students are actually being kind of encouraged to talk to current students and faculty and really get to know the people that you're going to be spending most of your time with if you were to attend that school. So, Davidson is a school of 1,900 students. We're a small community, and our average class size is 15, and really our philosophy on education is relationship with your faculty, relationship with your peers, and then experiential learning as well. So research, study abroad, and job shadow and internships are all a really important part of your education. And so at the admission office, we're generalists. We know a little bit about everything. And so we can tell you a few things about just about everything, but we really want to connect you to the people that you'd be spending most of your time with if you were to attend this school. So I would encourage you to, really dig into faculty bios behind departments, look into the departments that you're interested in, and you can even reach out to a faculty member and ask them questions like, what are students currently doing in your department? What are they going on to do? I know it can be intimidating to talk to a faculty member, but I promise you faculty love talking about what's going on in their department, so they're happy to talk to you. And at Davidson, we have an event called Discover Davidson, where we'll have academic panels where you can ask your own questions and also benefit from other students' questions. We'll have panels on service, activism, and social justice at Davidson. We have student panels that are unfiltered where you can ask all the questions of how is the food, or what do students wear to class? Do they wear their pajamas, or do they dress up for class? Those are all things you would want to know if you were visiting a school. So know that those options are available to you. And then one thing I also want to mention is Davidson is offering something called the Davidson Admission Intensive. and that is a free application coaching workshop series where we we do essay workshops, interview prep workshops. We actually partnered with Wake Forest on an interview workshop last week. So please join that and ask all of your questions. We're here as a resource to you, like Jen said. We want to be as helpful as we can throughout this process and really alleviate any fears that you have in the process. So if we can't answer your questions, we'll direct you to someone that can. So please feel free to reach out. Our favorite part of our jobs is working with students, and that's a little limited right now because we only get to see you all virtually. So know that we're excited to engage with you, and you can reach out to us at any point.
Good. And coming soon in your Crosby Charlotte student portal is information of exactly how the Davidson admissions intensives can count as academy credit. They're, like Megan just mentioned, they're partnering with other schools, so it's not entirely just an information session on Davidson. It's really diving into topics of admissions, and so very much counting for what we already are asking you to do for academy credit. So that's just a little carrot to attend those sessions. So thank you both so much for joining us today to share a little bit about your schools and ease the fears of the test optional policy. I really do hope that all the students who are on the call today are walking away knowing that this is not a trick, this is not a game, this is real, and it is every person, I'm sure, in their office, all very different, has the same emotion of caring for you and wanting to make sure that you are finding the best fit for the school that will really help you succeed for your future. And yes, the test scores, ACT and SAT, were a part of it, and it's changing this year. It's not to be scary and overwhelming. It's all that you've done so far in high school is really the record that you've shown. So thank you so much for coming on here and answering the students' questions. And I will also share Megan's email address as well, so you have that, and we will email that out to you all. If there's anything else that you guys want to, as students, add, you can go ahead and continue to put that in the chat box in the Q&A. But at this time, we are going to have you complete the confirmation of attendance. So I'm going to post that link in the chat box. Megan, Jen, you guys can stay on if there are any questions, but you're also welcome to log off because it's once they fill it out, the students can log off, so they may be leaving us very soon here. And I know that sometimes it happens very quickly. So, and I also understand you all as students have been on Zoom calls, except for today, because Fridays you guys have off, but you're just probably exhausted with being on Zoom calls and all of the things you've been doing so far in school. So let me get this link up for you all. The confirmation of attendance is a Google form, and it is in the chat box. So you guys can all click on that now, complete it. It does have to be completed, so if students, you cannot log off without doing it, because then you won't have the link to complete it. Once you have completed the form, you're welcome to head on out. Yeah, I see students filling it out, so you guys are accessing it. And again, it's in the chat box. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Megan. Your connection issues were no problems at all. It's every day it's like a new thing over here with our computers. So
it is. I have two kids doing virtual learning too, so I feel in the house. So I feel like we're all battling for bandwidth, and then the range doesn't help.
I know, that's what I've heard. I'm thankful I just have a 2-year-old, so there's no virtual learning right now. But I've heard it's like we have the highest bandwidth, but even just having 2 adults working from home, I usually will call my husband. You're going to have to stop streaming whatever is going on. Like, don't go to your webinar right now because I'm presenting. So I do that with the virtual learning. Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, let me know. Let me know if there's anything I can do. I'm going to sign off, but let me know if there's any way I can be helpful. I had a lot of fun.